So now you and your fiancé have crossed safely over into Switzerland. What happened next?
Well, okay, obviously the took us downtown to Geneva, and we checked in the hotel. Now here we are, her with her torn stockings, and me with my wet shoes flat, walking into that lobby, and people looked around, who are those two? So I explained to the clerk right away what it was, and Marty gave us a very nice room, beautiful room, nice white linens, everything else, and we were the happiest people together at that time, and obviously. So next morning, first thing, it was Saturday morning, we came across Friday night. Next morning, he called the office over in Switzerland, and Saturday morning, the usual office. First thing he told me, you know, we took already up a collection for you. You know, they thought I'm not going to make it anymore. I called them and anyway, was happy back. And then we married, obviously civil marriage on the 5th of December, 1942. And later on we had our religious wedding with a rabbi.
So what was life like for the young married couple in Switzerland, still during the war?
Matter of fact, the rabbi who married us, my wife, she met him in France in a camp where she cooked some kosher food for them. Dr. Ehrman, he was a dentist and a rabbi from Frankfurt, and they were a very good friend many years after that. Matter of fact, we gave him our bedroom when we left for America. Okay. Now, after that, obviously, I have my job in Fribourg. We are now in November of 1942, end of November, right? We came back, we married in December. And obviously I was, the war was still on. I was, okay, then I got my basic training I started basic training in spring of 1943.
For the Swiss Army?
For the Swiss Army. Renee, I think she worked at the Red Cross. She did something. She may have told a little bit about what she did. And when the basic training, unfortunately, that was only, was very close. It's training, where I had my basic training, was only about maybe 10, 15 miles from Fribourg. I was in the anti-aircraft, basic training first, that's where we were trained for anti-aircraft division, what we call it, of the Army. And so I got the permit to go home every weekend, so I took a train. Most people had to go, came further away, but I could get home, and Fribourg was very close by, so then your basic training was only 4 months in Switzerland. Then I went back to my job, and every so often you went back to make your active duties. You stayed for, during wartime, I got my salary. You go 2 months, I think it's 2 or 3 months, I don't know exactly the duration of, it's a rotating basis, that you have a group, a company who occupies certain batteries of guns and searchlights and so on. And then after 3 months you were relieved and you go back home and work. So we are alternating our, it's a very small country, so I was always in touch, so that was not that bad. Basic training, and then afterwards they needed people as mechanics, repair people, so I volunteered and get a special training for repairing the searchlights. Took engines apart. Matter of fact, we had Buick engines to drive our generators. So we learned how to do things apart, and then I was in the Army until end of the war. Sylvia, now obviously we expected our first child. Sylvia, she was born in Fribourg in April 1944. And after that, I was stayed, and finally I wanted to get a different job, and I got a new job in 1946 in Schaffhausen, which is northern part of Switzerland, near the German border. And there I was involved in redesigning. We had licenses with American companies. We redesigned equipment from the inch system, metric system. I was developing new pieces of machinery, and a very good job there. And Renee, she took care of kid, and that's about it. And that was 1946 on. And later on, I always had the desire to spend some time in the United States. And I think we got a first visit from her cousin in 1948. And he said, in case you come, we're going to give you affidavits. And finally, in 1950, I decided I have to go spend, now it's young enough to try it. I didn't have the intention to move completely to the United States, just want to spend some time here because with my contact with the people from here, I know a little bit what's going on. And so then I asked for, what do you call it, not sabbatical, leave of absence for 2 years. First I want to make all my paper ready because in Switzerland you have to give, what do you call it, to leave, you have to tell them 2 months ahead of time. Both ways, they cannot let you off, you have to give you 2 months. Salaried people 2 months, hourly people a week. But salaried, you have to give notice 2 months ahead, that's what I'm going to say, notice. And I says, well, first I have to see everything is ready, then I give them notice. So I did that, and I worked on developed a new machine, and told him I'd like to go spend can you give me no leave of absence? Says no. Either you quit or you can always come back. But first he said, reconsider it. And I didn't want to leave without knowing I can go back here because, you know, what else can I do? So finally I said, okay, they told me postpone it for a year. Maybe I thought I might change my mind. Meantime, I finished the design. I did the machine, we tested it, and they sent it over to, we had an agreement that whatever we develop, we send to the United States, to our licensor, and vice versa. So the equipment was sent over to the States, the machine I developed, and we built and tested it, and they sent it to the Ford Motor Company, Dearborn. I was in the foundry, in the cast engine, in the manufacturing of castings, casting manufacturing. And so I still decided I want to go. After he said, okay, I see you want to spend some time in the States. Okay. But you know what you do? We give you just give us notice because in case you just change your mind, you don't have to come back. We had some bad experience with another engineer who did the same thing. We sent him over. Obviously, that's what the company sent him over. After he came back, he found a better job and from his based on his experience, he quit. We don't do that again. So he says, but you just quit. If honestly it was a real bad time, you can come back to work with us. They were nice. They made me all up in their big, in their carpenter shop. They made me all the boxes for our books and whatever I want to take along. They're very, very nice. So okay. So I prepared the departure, and that's where we decided we left in 1951, sold our furnitures, and that's where we decided to leave for the United States. And
so in 1951, you and Renee and your daughter Sylvia moved to the United States.
Right, we went.
And when you, tell me about building a life here when you came to the United States.
Okay, now, we had very easy because her cousin, when you arrived to New York, I had my cases and books and so on. They had also manufacturing in Linden, so they could store those things in their place. And when we came to their place, the other rented for us an apartment. In the first level, they lived in an apartment building. The lady who owned that apartment, she was in May of 1951. She left for the summer, and we could rent her place. And the thing was all full with food, so we arrived very, very well. There was no problem at all. And then she explained to me all the three groups of Jewish organizations in the United States, the Orthodox, Conservative, and Reformed, and even some details what group to belong to each group. Anyway, so the first thing she told me, you know, that's interesting. In this country, it doesn't, as long as you make money, it doesn't matter how you make it. That's the advice he gave me. That's just fresh coming from Europe. Doesn't matter. Interesting. Also, she told me that the wealthy one are the Reformed, and the other ones are the Conservative, and the poor one are the Orthodox. That's the two advice. That's the two things she told me. I remember.
So
anyway, so Sylvia and Renee, they stayed there, and I went looking for a job. Obviously, the first thing I did, I went to had an introduction to. You couldn't tell that you have a job. You couldn't line up. At that time, you were not allowed to have a job lined up before you leave. They warned me, he says, even on the boat, if somebody asks you, do you have a job when you arrive in the United States? And he says, you have one. They can send you right back. But as soon as you put foot on land in New York, you can do whatever you want.
So where did you go to work when you came back after New York?
Well, I went to the Detroit area. Obviously, the first thing I did, I went to Ford Motor Company because that's where my machine, that's where I got introduction for my license. So one lived in New York, and he gave me a car, business card. Go and see that guy at Ford. They probably can give you a job. So that's what I did. That's why I went up in Detroit. And I went to see that guy, and he introduced me to the Ford people. And very kind and nice. And yeah, the machine, it's a huge plan. You go to Dearborn Rouge, you're going to find a machine somewhere in there. So they didn't pass. They say, well, possibly somewhere. So they told me, yes, we have 2 plants under construction, but it's 2 months before we can give you a job. And meantime, I had enough money to stay 2 months and go back. If I find anything working that time, I didn't want to be in charge of my relatives. All I needed is the affidavits, which actually a brother of my mother and her cousin gave us. The brother I mentioned who came to America earlier. And so in the meantime, I called some small machine shop up. I could go to work, so I got to work there, but I want to go to a big plant. And eventually, first occasion I went to interview, and I was interviewed at Pontiac Motor. Went to Studebaker. That time was Studebaker was still in action, and it was in South Bend, Indiana. And interviewed at Pontiac, and says, yes, we could. We are starting automation, and give me a job. That's why that was Pontiac Motor Division.
At Pontiac Motor Division of what company?
General Motors. General Motors, Pontiac Motor Division. That's where I started to work, and that's where we moved to. Obviously, in between, we moved to Dearborn, and then we moved up to Pontiac.
How many years did you work for General Motors?
I worked for General Motors for about 20 years. It was until 1975, and that was so, you know, the oil embargo we had. Prior to that, we were in a down period, maybe not as worse than now. So it's a downturn, and there were a lot of layoffs. And the corporation, they wanted to build a new plant in Brazil. They already have a plant in Brazil, and they put together a group of people from different divisions in Pontiac. Then they took me also up. I had a group of people. I worked with the overseas division of General Motors, and they put me in charge of the foundry design. They want to build a new foundry and a new engine plant in Sao Paulo, Brazil. And I was put in charge of that group of people, and I was ready to move down there. They want me to line up contractors. And Rennie was ready to take a sabbatical from her school leave. And what happens, they want to do the oil embargo. It was just before the oil embargo came, and they canceled the whole project because they didn't. So they canceled the project, and everybody was sent back to their own divisions. At Pontiac, they started to have a layout procedure based not on your capability, but on how long you are with the company. And I was there a total of 20 years, but in between, I left once and tried to see if I can do it on my own. You know, if you advance, you see, I found out there's kind of a limit for several reasons. And I felt I tried on my own. I left the corporation for 2-3 years. And then I had a fellow want me to join him, but for some reason he didn't want to share. I said, the only reason I stay with you is I worked 1 year with him. He was a good salesman. I did all of good engineering. And we had work. But then I said, the only condition I stay with you, I want to be part of the company. Because if something happened to you, your wife sells it, and I'm out. And that dragged on for 2 years, and he still couldn't make up his mind. So one day I met some people from General Motors and told him what I'm doing. He says, listen, if you come back, we can use you. And so I say, goodbye, Mr. Swenson. I go back to General Motors, and expected me to do that. So that was actually in 64. Before 75. In other words, we got a little bit distracted here. In 75, okay, that's the reason why they counted 13 years by the time I came back.
Okay, so in
So
1970,
they do seniority all the way back. So I started in 51, then had an interruption, but they counted up to continuous service. It was 13 years. So they get back seniority 13 years back. And I was trying to, I told her, look what I'm doing. I prepared them all kinds of projects I can do until things getting better.
but so you were laid off in 75?
I took early retirement. I was 55 years old. And I told them I'm not going to accept layoff. If you would be in a red light at Chrysler at that time, I would say yes, but you were in a black. And I told them I have 2 projects I could work on and get things together. We could implement it. No way. And that's when I took early retirement.
So let's update your family. You mentioned Sylvie was born in Freiburg. Did you have any other children?
Yeah, we had Armand. Yeah, he came in this country. He was born in 1953. I forgot about that. Huh?
I won't let you forget. And tell me now. Tell me now about your family. Tell me about your wife and your children. And do you have grandchildren?
Yes. In other words, Armand was born in 1953 in Pontiac, and let's see. All right, Sylvia both went to University of Michigan, and Sylvia, she was into teaching. She had a job in Chicago, where she met her husband, and they married. Now, if my wife had her the year of the marriage, do you remember? And if you asked her, when was it? That we can figure out back. Her oldest 30 years, so it's about 30 years back. So we can figure out in 70, 72, 70, that time period. Let me see. Could be.
So
anyway, I should have checked the wedding days. Anyway, so she married and they have 2 kids, 2 boys.
What are their names?
The names are, the oldest one is Martin, and the year younger is David. Martin married a year ago, and David, he will have his wedding next September, Labor Day weekend. And Armand, he's 9.5 years younger. He was born in Pontiac in October 1953. He also went through Michigan. He went to Cranbrook, and he graduated from Cranbrook in 1971 because he just had a 30th meeting here, reunion last month. And then he went to University of Michigan, and then he went to med school, and he's a cardiologist in Louisville, Kentucky. They're married in 83, I believe.
And what is his wife's name?
And my wife is Mary Lee. She's from Pittsburgh.
And what?
And they met to their residency in Pittsburgh. That's where he did his residency.
What is Sylvie's husband's name?
Sylvia's husband's name is Michael. He's from New York originally.
Do Armand and Mary Lee have children?
Yes, they have 2 boys.
And what are the name of those grandchildren?
The oldest one is Daniel. He's going to be 60 in November. And Nathan, he's going to be 13, December 31st of this year. 2001, and have his bar mitzvah next January.
And what, this is July, what anniversary will you celebrate with Renee in December of this year?
That's 59. Yeah. 59 next December.
Mr. Rothschild, let me ask you in conclusion, what message do you want to leave behind based on all of these life experiences, all of the travails and the danger that you went through and the family that you lost? What message do you want to leave behind given your background?
Well, let's put it this way. First of all, the question I have, why did we survive, and not my family, which are also good people, God-fearing people? And we have no explanation. Maybe one day we find out. But there's one thing what I want to say also. Inasmuch as if you look at your prayer books, and we thank God for everything we have and do, and we seem to depend, we hope that if we are in trouble, God's going to help us. And our people, they always say, trust in God, is something going to happen. And I feel we should more in our religion, which is basically a good, what they call a philosophy of life of Jewish religion. We should perhaps emphasize more. You should help yourself. You're saying you help yourself, God will help you. We should too many of those people hope they are in the bad situation. They say something's going to work out. You have to do it yourself. And again, I may not be here if my wife, she has that, whether intuitive or whatever, she has that sight, what's going to happen. And nobody wants to see that danger. So what I leave behind, again, is one thing I would say, people, they get a good guidance to follow our religion, which I think they have very good things. And very often, I would say, can be compared to the American Constitution. Look what this country did for us. Look how many people they helped. They had to come to help twice to help the European win the war. And if there wouldn't be the United States, there wouldn't be an Israel. Europeans didn't learn a thing. Look nowadays, the only place where we can count on, or which hopefully we can count on, is the people in this country, the common system we have. Whether you can call religion, which is perhaps certain things can be improved, but it still seems to be what they teach you. That's why we have so many successful people in our religion. Same with our Constitution, even it isn't perfect. People, we are successful. Why are we successful? Is it the people who wrote the Constitution that they make us what we are today? This is basically the way I look at it.
Is there anything else that you want to say to leave behind for your children and your grandchildren, and any words of wisdom you'd like to leave?
Well, but I hope that obviously, I think this one point I want to say, you have to look around you, see what's happening, and try to trust yourself, what you can achieve. You got a good background, you all have good professions. Also, what we see, what we give our children, I see they do it with their kids. They are doing well in school. We are very proud of them. We are proud of Sylvia's achievement, our daughter. We are so lucky, our son, how well what he achieved. And I see the two boys of him. They excel in school, all straight age schools, they are active in sports. I mean, the way we see it, we couldn't ask for anything better to see our daughter's life and her children, what they do, and I see our son, what he achieves. We are so blessed and fortunate that we are able to rebuild a family. That's about basically, I'm very thankful for that. And why that's the way it is, and because we are very thankful. Whether somebody up there guides us or not, I believe there is a superior, higher intelligence around. That's my belief. What it is, I don't know.
Is there anything else you'd like to add? Or?
Well, obviously, I was fortunate. Like I say, I started the whole thing, and I was fortunate to meet a wonderful girl, which again, I have to say, if I wouldn't have met her, I wouldn't be able to tell you all that. I would have stayed there. I would have been caught with everybody else. The only reason why, and then again, she took the hard way. She could have decided to go with me. She decided not to. I listened to my mother. I could have said, well, I get married anyway, but I listened to my mother. All those things together, it's, I know whether you can give them a whole, it just, despite the tragedy we suffered, and as we are today, I think the way it works out, it's just some of those things we have to accept, and we think about we cannot forget it, but we have to go on. And hopefully we can stay together for quite a while.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Rothschild. Thank you.
Thank you for the interview. I appreciate that you did it. And I hope if somebody down the line sees that, and with so many others you have, and hopefully we will have a better world. And obviously, in conclusion, I may say too, and anybody who sees those stories, we're not here anymore. What happened to the state of Israel? This is my concern nowadays. Is Israel going to survive? And hope it does.
Thank you. And Mr. Rothschild, can you tell us who is in this picture starting from the upper left?
On the upper left, this is a sister of my mother, which you can see sitting in the middle. And next to her standing is her brother, which was the oldest one, Gus. And then we go to the girl, the left, next to my grandmother. That's another sister of my mother, the youngest one. And you have my grandmother, Lena. Then you have my mother, Thelma. And next to her, in front, is her another brother, Rudy, who came to the United States in the 20s. And behind him is the brother Carl. And then to the right is my grandfather. That was their 25th wedding anniversary. That's the 27th of April, 1917.
And where was this picture taken?
It was taken in Rust. I assume that's a photographer in the town Rust, which is in Germany.
And who is this a photograph of?
Now, this is a picture of my parents. I assume it's at a wedding. I don't know exactly what date. My father, Samuel, we call him Sally, and my mother, Thelma. And they were married in June of 1919. My father passed away early. He was only 49 years old in 1928.
And who is this a photograph of?
This is a picture we was taken, must be early 1928. My mother made it for my father's birthday. And to the left is my sister Yula, my brother Fritz, little boy there, that's the youngest one, and myself to the right.
And where was this taken?
That was taken in Zurich.
And who is this?
Well, there's again me standing next to my sister. It was taken in 1940, November. Actually, it was on the birthday of Renee. And with my mother sitting and my brother. I'm just next to my sister.
And where was this taken?
That was taken in Saint-Aragon in France.
And what is this document?
This is an authorized document by Renee's parents when they were interned in Gurs, where they consent to the marriage of her daughter Renee to me.
And what is the year?
Well, the date of the document, I think it's in May 1940. It's in 1941, I believe. And obviously shows you how long they were there. They were deported in a year later. But they gave me the document, which they didn't have to do it, but I felt they wanted to be sure that I had permission to make, they consent that they marry their daughter.
And what is this a group shot of?
This is a group shot when my grandparents celebrated their 50th wedding anniversary, which was April 27, 1942. And this just happened a few weeks before most of those people on that picture were deported. You have again, starting from the left, those two people, they were guests. Next in the back row is a sister of my mother, Martha. Next to her is her son, Ernest. Then you have her sister, Fanny. Then my brother, Frederick. In front, starting from the left, one lady is a guest. And then is my cousin, Rita, my aunt, Ernie, her daughter, Marion. Then you have the Gerdi, which is in front of her mother behind there, which is the daughter of Aunt Fanny. Next to her is Sadie. And the right is my sister Yula. In front of her sitting is my mother. Then you have my grandparents, and the youngest of my cousins is Jeanette, which is sitting on my mother's lap.